just to go back,
what drove me a lot in AmaZulu Football Club, it wasn't just an interest in football per se, but it was also the interest in the brand of AmaZulu.
The first few years were not a smooth sailing for Usuthu when you took over.
From a club point of view, it was a gamble, in that it's not a player that was well known to us, looking at the time, etc., etc. We took a gamble, and thank God it paid off. The problem in football is that whenever you lose a game, the guy that's handling the muti, he will never say to you, my muti didn't work. There'll always be an excuse. So now, hey, it's those naked women there.
What is driving the clubs to spend way beyond their means? And I think 42 million rands in 2005 was a lot of money.
It wasn't quite 42. Maybe it was 42 including VAT. I'm not sure.
But you're not answering me. Get to Usuthu.
I can't talk of the club secrets now. And I think the biggest risk for me that the PSL faces is life after Dr. Ivan Khoza.
There's a very important question that I didn't ask you.
Yes.
When you and the old man decided to go to, it's time to let go of Usuthu, what triggered that moment?
There's a saying that says, a good dancer knows when to leave the dance floor.
Welcome to the latest edition of Far More for the Fans, a podcast. My name is Velilem Nyando, and this time around, we are continuing to bring you some top content. Also coming with some of the legends that we've been speaking to here, but this time around, it's 30 short left. We are going on the side of administration, a lot of good stories that we've had in the past about how some of our wonderful clubs were formed, and how some families were instrumental in bringing these football clubs into the space. And joining us today is former general manager at AmaZulu, Lunga Sokhela. We know you've played a very good role when it comes to bring up the name of Usuthu. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you very much, and hello to the viewers of the podcast. I'm happy to be here.
Are you still keeping up with the game?
Very much so. I'm enjoying being a fan, not just of our local game.
For sure.
For sure. My blood is green. I'll love the team till I die.
In fact, just going back, when we look at Usuthu, way back in the day, I think the family, you came into the space around 2005. In terms of your involvement, Ubaba Sokhela, what really triggered you to come into the space?
Okay, my father grew up being an AmaZulu supporter. So for him, it was always a passion of his, the game of football, and specifically AmaZulu Football Club, especially if you look at the history, the community that he grew up in. And I think at the time, he got to experience a real heyday of AmaZulu. So during the later years, with us growing up, as we know, the club went through many problems. So when he got the opportunity, especially when he went into business, he was actually approached by supporters of the club and said, "Hey, Sokhela, we know you've grown up being a fan of this club. Please, can you rescue it?" At that time, if you can recall, the club had been renamed Zulu Royals and was plying their trade in the Mvela League at the time. So supporters wanted AmaZulu Football Club back, not Zulu Royals. And the club wasn't very stable. So he was convinced to fulfill, I would guess, his childhood dream of bringing the team back into glory and re-establishing AmaZulu Football Club again.
I'm coming back to those days of the status being bought, because I'm sure a lot went into that. But just to go back, Walthinta kahle nje.
I'll be honest, the school I went to, because I went into high school in 1996. Now, if you can recall correctly, that was a year after we'd won the Rugby World Cup.
Yes.
So the country was in rugby mode, and the school that I went to, football was not a priority sport, to be honest with you. But it was a boarding school, and us boarders, to entertain ourselves, we played a variety of sports. So I played it on a social level, to pass time with my with my friends, etc., etc. But it wasn't taken very seriously at that time. Then when I left high school, I then went to Cape Town to study, and it was actually at that time. Ekapa were doing other things. Forget about even sports at university. And it was at that time actually when the talks of the deal happened. So when I left, and in fact things happened very quickly because, I graduated in 2005, I think, after my postgraduate studies, and I went into the Shell graduate program. So after 11 months, that's when I jumped ship and I said, no man, the old man said, come and help me here. And that's where my journey with the club started.
So obviously this would have influenced your administrative side of interest in the game.
No, 100%. I was passionate about sports as well. I love sports. I love the type of environment that football is. Very dynamic, allows for creativity. But there were a lot of challenges at the time, for us. Essentially, we didn't buy a club. We bought a name, and then we had to build a club. There was no infrastructure, there was no offices, there were no players. It had to be built ground up. So a lot of work had to go into it. And that has its pros and cons. Unfortunately, the cons are that you don't have any institutional knowledge that you can build on. But then the pros are that you're now given a blank canvas to write your own story.
We see this happening all the time, and I know that I've interacted with a lot of guys who grew up in this space of professional football, like you. I remember growing up covering football, professional football in the Eastern Cape. When we first started covering Bushbucks, it was about 10 Pasia, but would deal with Sturu Pasia as time went on. Same story with Khotso and also Ranzi at Free State Stars. That balance, because at the end of the day, it's still a family business. But the balance of having the family and also have professionals occupying some roles, I see how it's going even now. You still have more family members involved, but there are also clubs where you see that the professionals are taking their space.
No, 100%. And I think if you mention a lot of the people that you're talking about, they also have a professional background to them as well. Yes, they grew up in the environment, but it's far more professionalized, the way that we grew into it. As I said to you, one did go to school, one did get exposure in an outside company, and that becomes very important. And for a brand like AmaZulu, yes, the ownership might rest in the family, but because of the type of institution that it is and the history behind the club, especially also it being a club that's it's approaching 100 years now, there's there's a culture of ownership by especially the people of the province, Zulu people, Zulu heritage, etc., etc. So yes, the ownership might have rested in the Sokhela family, but in terms of ownership, if we went into that mentality that, hey, this is a family business, how can you say you own AmaZulu Football Club? That's heritage. That belongs to the Zulu people, the Zulu monarch, etc., etc. So it's different, unlike clubs like Ria Stars or Chipa United, that are named after our friend Mr. Chipa Beges. You know what I mean. So it's a different mindset that AmaZulu Football Club had to apply.
Yeah. going back to 2005, the sale of the club now, I heard that around the time it was 42 million rands that you spent on a Dynamo. So would you say that was justified at the time? And I think 42 million rands in 2005 was a lot of money.
It wasn't quite 42. Maybe it was 42 including VAT. I'm not sure. But it wasn't quite 42. But look, you got to assess where the country was at the time. Right? Number one, football-wise, we were approaching the World Cup. The commercial case for clubs was justifiable for that type of money.
It's just after we had won the bid.
I think this was just after. When was the bid announced? Yes, 2005. It was,
and there was a boom now towards
there was
football.
A boom. There was a Super Sports broadcast deal that had just been announced. I mean, I tell people now that between that time to the World Cup, companies were falling over themselves to put money into football. So at that time, it was justified. There was, they were looking forward to the World Cup. And we wanted AmaZulu to be there. I think our sponsors as well were really keen to support that move because, SPAR also wanted a piece of the cake. Everyone was talking football in South Africa. It was football madness. So if you put all of those into consideration, it made sense. Now, I tell people all the time when they say, Lunga, when are you going to come back into football? And I say to them, well, I don't see too many clubs that have got a commercial case for that level of investment. And by that I mean, what clubs have got a brand that's sellable, both to the public, to sponsors, right? And what clubs have got potential to go beyond the borders in terms of the brand? In South Africa, you talk about 4 or 5, of which AmaZulu is one of them. So the brand itself, AmaZulu, is an extremely strong brand. So to answer your question, all of those factors put together justified that high investments in the brand.
So when you say going beyond the borders abroad, do you mean going in terms of taking the brand on the continent, in the region, the SADC region, the COSAFA region? Because there's also a strong feeling that, yes, the PSL is shown at that level, even on the continent. But clubs, even the bigger clubs, I was glad to see Sundowns recently. In fact, just now in this international week, going to Uganda.
Yes.
And I saw some fans saying, no, but why are they going there? But this is the same team that's got players from Uganda and will be playing, representing Africa in the expanded Club World Cup.
I mean, you see the world today. There's no borders. Borders are artificial now. Business is done across the world. As a brand, you can't be narrow in your thinking, and that's why we embarked on projects such as bringing Manchester United here, Manchester City, because we wanted to take our brand outside of the borders of South Africa, and at the same time, as you are saying, the Zulu brand, let's forget AmaZulu Football Club, the Zulu brand is known globally, right?
Correct.
You go to the corners of Cambodia or Brazil, when you mention our history, Shaka Zulu and the Zulu people know who we are. Yeah. So it's important not to limit yourself and say, well, no, I'm a team that's just going to play my football in Durban and I'm just going to be a community team. Then if that was the thinking, the investment that you're talking about wouldn't be justified.
Yeah, is that why you also had a branch in East London?
Exactly. You gotta go far and wide. And just to digress a little bit, if I'm allowed, I hope I'm allowed. I remember when I came in, my tenure as general manager, and I said to the board to now, because I wanted them to be clear about how I'm going to approach things within the club. My question to them was, okay, or let me not say my question to them. I told them, guys, okay, we want to be the best, right? Now, there's two ways of going about it. Who's the benchmark right now? It's Sundowns.
Yes.
How can we beat Sundowns? One, can we?
The best technically, ne?
Well, the best, technically, they were doing the best at the time in terms of winning the league, etc., etc. So now, how do you beat them in the market? Are you going to be able to outbid them in terms of the acquisition of players? Impossible. Right. So then we had to implement a strategy of saying, okay, we want to be all over in terms of partnerships, in terms of a scouting network, etc., etc. Hence why, as you mentioned, we had Mr. Mlanjana with a very good partnership with them. Vokes in East London, so that our hands are everywhere, and we could get the best players and bring them here to develop them, and then be able to compete at the highest level. And I think if you look at Stellenbosch now, I tell people all the time, guys, in 3-4 years, that team will be competing for the league, and you won't even know how they did it. But I know what they're doing, and it's going to get them far.
I think I'm going to revisit this issue of models, because it's important that each club has got its model, and this is what I talk about. But the first few years were not a smooth sailing for Usotho when you took over. Let's take us back, and how did you manage to overcome those obstacles?
Look, it was extremely difficult. You know, as I say to you, there was no handover or imparting of knowledge. There was no expertise, you know, within us that were there at the time. You know, my old man has never worked in the football industry. Who else was there? There was James Lamini as well. He didn't really have a long background in professional football. The likes of Okati Lamini, yes, you know, they did, but not to the level that we can say, you know, we had strong institutional knowledge. So we had to learn, and we had to teach each other a lot of things. And now there was a certain standard, which I think in terms of a high level of expectation from us. So it was never going to be easy. We had to pay our school fees, but I think we learned, and slowly but surely we put the thing together. We also made hard calls, especially when it came to rebranding the club. You know, rebranding the logo, changing the colors a little bit. You know, you know our supporters at AmaZulu, they're very stiff, and this is who we are, and that must not change. So, you know, we took those brave decisions. So it wasn't smooth, but we learned, and we held each other's hands, and we moved on.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be open. The first club I supported, first club I supported was Lunga Sokhela, because of my dad. But Ekaya, even if you support the Swallows or support Hani, Usotho, you'll always be a team Yasekaya. But I want to go back to the point that you've just made about Steve and also the traditional Usotho supporters, because that's what I would also find in Swallow supporters. Even when you go to the stadium, and in terms of the rebranding, how are you doing in terms of trying to get the younger Usotho supporters?
Look, we had to have a plan. We literally had to draft a whole strategy plan. As I'm saying, we analyzed everything. We analyzed the logo. We had to analyze the messaging around the brand, how we're going to market the brand, what platforms we're going to be available on, etc., etc. You know, and that was important, because you can't, most brands and companies...
And were they responsive?
Well, at first it was difficult, as you know. You know, when we came in 2005, you'd look around the stadium, it would be old men, not even women. You know, I think if you go there now, and you look at the AmaZulu crowd and the makeup, and the interaction on social media, a lot of young people, you know, where to design our jerseys, so our jerseys is cool. You know, we align with nice, sexy brands, Adidas, Reebok, Umbro, you know, launch the jersey beginning of the year, use influences and all of that. So it wasn't it wasn't just a flick of a coin. Tough negotiations with the sponsors because we wanted to wear, as I said, Adidas. You know, it's a recognized brand, etc.
Correct.
We wanted to be in store, so that when you walk on the street, you see a guy wearing an AmaZulu jersey. You know, I'm happy to see that now, you know, they've got a store at Mabunda, which has taken it a level up. You know, they're coming up with nice fashion stuff. So at first there was resistance, but we had to make that change. Because any brand that's just appealing to the old is a dying brand. Because sorry to say, you know, we're all guaranteed to die. So if all your supporters are old, every year you're going to have less and less supporters. And I don't know if you saw back in those days, which was not very popular, you know, we got cheerleaders. That gave us a lot of problems. I had to cancel that. You know, the problem in football is that whenever you lose a game, the guy that's handling the muti, he will never say to you, "My muti didn't work." There'll always be an excuse. So now, hey, it's those naked women that were on the field. So I said, hey, let me cancel these ladies here, you know. But so we were active, and we were on the ground, we were at campuses, etc., etc. So some of our initiatives, such as the one I refer to now, were not very well received. But over time, you can see the mix. You're seeing young people saying, no, I support AmaZulu. They buy tickets, they go to the games, they buy our merchandise. They go to these boot camps that are there now. You know, we are now a young, fresh, cool, sexy brand.
And futhi beningeke nibe ngamaZulu and indaba yomuthi ingabikho.
Hey, you'll be surprised, who's far more aggressive when it comes to Muti within the league. You know, and it's not us. Other clubs will kill you. There's been fights that have broken out in the mixed zones. There's clubs that bring 20 bodyguards to administer this Muti thing. Hey, it's not an easy thing.
But you're not answering me.
Yes. I can't talk of the club secrets now. Those things I must take to the grave.
Is still there, but success on the field is also important, and success on the field also makes things easier when it comes to the commercialization side of the game. And I think during the time when you bought the club, just a year or later, you brought on someone who had done very well when he came back into the country at Kaizer Chiefs, the late John Shoes Mushweu. And recently, I think at the beginning of this year, I had been here at home, and then I went to Usutu. Bongani Zungu had just started. And one of the guys at Usutu who was also there back then, they were talking about, I think it was Lita Nglabi. Yes, Lita was saying, Ubongani is coming here to Usutu and to have that John Shoes Mushweu moment. And I gather that Shoes really changed the mentality of a number of players at the club. How do you look back at having a legend like him, and what did it do to the rest of the team that was there?
I mean, Shoes was a massive presence. Besides, I mean, he was obviously a very big brand in his own rights. Everywhere you go, people ask where Shoes is. Almost similar to Usiabonga Namvete in the later years.
Yes.
And you know, being a new club in the PSL at the time, as I'm saying, you needed those strong personalities within the team to also guide the youngsters. I think a coach's influence can only go so far. You need those pillars of strength within your squad, not just to help the players only, but even to help us and to advise us. Would say, hey guys, maybe you can look at things differently. Let's do things like this or like that. So he was a very important figure within the makeup of AmaZulu Football Club.
And I think after that time, also you sort of stabilized especially between 2005 leading to the 2010 World Cup?
We stabilized. We got better with things as the years went by, as we learned how to do things better, as we got younger players that now spend more time. Now they're on the second, they're on the third year at AmaZulu Football Club. There was a time we had the likes of Ted Dumitru come on board, and they allowed us to scout 2 or 3 very good players. So every year we were slowly improving. We not just from a player selection side, but even from a management side. It was another year under our belt in terms of learning, now understanding the South African football landscape. And it always helps, obviously, when you do make some good signings. I mean, it's very positive for the stability of the club. So I just think that the club was now becoming more stable. We're learning better. There was now more institutional knowledge. We're building the infrastructure. So even though the brand was old, the structures were now becoming more and more solid as the years were going by.
And I think I'm going to revisit this when we talk about Safa, because now you're also helping out at Safa, because I feel that strongly that KZN talent, top KZN talent, must start at KZN clubs.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at the situation of Mbogazi, for instance, he comes from Hluhlu, where he plays only in the Engine tournament, and immediately he's taken up by Pirates. So it means that the clubs have to improve on their scouting programs, but also on retaining the talent.
No, that's very true, and I think it is sad, and that's why even myself, as I said when I came in, it's now to build a network. A lot of clubs, especially your more popular clubs, right, have got people naturally, because they have a lot of supporters in every corner of the country. It's easier to then draw players, right? But clubs such as Pirates have always had their feelers everywhere. Sundowns now is also setting up that network. So, and you're correct. We embarked on a strategy to say, let's just close the borders of KZN. You've got all the talent that you need.
Yeah.
But I think to complement that, to be honest, Velile, we also, or let me not say we, football clubs also need to be protected. Because if you're a club, AmaZulu Football Club, I'll give you an example. We had a program where we put all our youngsters in a schooling system, Glenwood High School.
Oh, yes.
Right? We educated them, we look after them, etc., etc. Now, with young players, before they turn 18, you can't sign any long-term contract with them. You can't tie them down. He's allowed to leave at any time. You see now some of these players we left at the club overnight, 2 of them. There's Stellenbosch FC. In fact, one of them, I think, is Major.
Really?
Is it? Yeah, he's a key player in Stellenbosch.
Yes.
What did AmaZulu
going to
do?
the under-20 AFCON.
He's going to the under-20 AFCON. Now, where's the protection for AmaZulu Football Club? And that was my biggest gripe. That we're investing time, money in these players, yet there's nothing legally we can do to say, well, we want to protect our investments. So then it makes it easier if the parents are Pirate supporters or Sundown supporters to now, and parents are they're the worst people, the parents. They're the ones that take these kids, I've always supported Sundown since I grew up. I'd love my next thing you phone in the boy, hey, why are you not back at school?
Because also you've invested a lot of money.
You've invested a lot of money and time.
In this boy.
And time. People don't ever put the value of time. A lot of time. Looking after the boy, whenever he needs anything in school, you are there. You paying coaches to coach him. It's a massive investment, and people underestimate that.
I see it happening a lot, especially between Sundowns and Chiefs.
Yes.
But I think just before 2010, you guys had a trip, and I think you were part of that trip, to the 2009 Euros.
Where we went to was it Germany
Yeah,
at the time?
I think I'm not sure.
Which trip are you-
Austria. Was it Austria? Euros.
With the other PSL, PSL.
Yeah, part of the PSL.
Yeah, I remember there was a trip. I didn't go myself, but there was a trip. I think it was it was the Euros.
Yes.
I couldn't make it. I think I was visiting elsewhere.
Oh, okay, but you're supposed to be part of it.
Yes.
Yeah, because I wanted to gauge in terms of how did those trips help the next layer, not necessarily of leadership, but administrators, because when I see most of the guys who were part of that, some of them are still more involved now, either in the league or in the clubs, and I gather that it was to prepare this generation.
Yeah, look, it's sad because at those times there was a big engagement between the league and clubs. In fact, there used to be regular workshops. So that's us as clubs, even from whether it's marketing, technical, we'd have, at that time, I think it was Zolambuli, they would come and tell us what the league is planning on doing, and there'd be an alignment. There would be security workshops where the security manager speaks to clubs and all of that. Now, I went to the trip during the Russia World Cup.
Yes. 2018,
right? And those are very important. I mean, even to a point where SuperSport took a couple of us to a tailor-made course, a manager's course at the Business School.
Yes.
So those interactions were there a lot before, and I think it's very important that there isn't a Chinese wall between clubs and the league. Because if you look at other countries, the way that they look at the league is there to serve clubs. So now how do you serve us if we're not engaging? We're not allowed to talk. There's this big Chinese wall. So going back to your question, I think that level of exposure that the league was giving, call it the new generation or the younger generation, it's good that we got that exposure. We see a big tournament. In fact, even KZN took us, myself, Pilani, the Cadodias from Marisburg United. We all went on a learning trip to Germany, where we visited Augsburg Football Club. We spent a day at with the Bundesliga as well. So those were very critical.
Yeah, what caught your attention there in the Bundesliga?
Professionalism of the league. The organization of supporters and the supporters clubs of all the different clubs within Germany, and the focus on grassroots development. I saw that in Germany. I saw that in Spain. When you go to these clubs, there's football being played. Well, I won't say 24/7, but there's just so much football activity happening there, and there's a club culture in the true sense of the word, club culture.
Correct.
Where people have got, they're members of the club, So, unfortunately, and that's something that I think we need in South Africa, because so long as clubs don't have homes, me as an AmaZulu supporter cannot go to the AmaZulu stadium, send my kid, my 8-year-old on Saturday morning. They're playing small, kid games. There's a bar there I can sit and watch AmaZulu games. There's a fan shop and I can see a museum of AmaZulu there, all the players, etc., etc. Where's the growth gonna come from? So I picked up on a lot of those things, but I think what's also critical about those leagues, and I'm not sure if you're gonna get to it later, but it's also the compliance that's required of clubs. Both
something similar to the compliance manual that you have here?
Well, compliance manual, but furthermore, financial compliance.
Okay.
Because that ensures that you don't have what's happening now, recently. Clubs now, games are postponed because the club can't pay for flight tickets to go to games, and this recent thing, a club all of a sudden, hey, it's attached because it owes money to SARS and all of that. There's far more stringent checks and balances to make sure that clubs are running sustainably, right? And that they are staying above the law, because it's not a small matter if a club collapses.
So what you're talking about is what? More financial fair play, more of the league. What is it? Is it the first instance body that would have more say or even check the finances of the club?
I would say yes. There's far more stringent control. Well, let me not say control, but oversight of clubs and club finances.
So who do this? Because the league can be the referee and the player at the same time.
Well, if you're a league like ours, and the exco is club chairman and club owners, then it becomes a problem. Therein lies a problem. But if the league was independent, fully independent in terms of the day-to-day running, then you can implement those rules and regulations, what. But there's a lot of if you look at leagues like La Liga, the ones I've been exposed to at least,
yes,
La Liga and the Bundesliga, far more. You watch with the hawk's eye in terms of compliance, even when it comes to what clubs can do in terms of movement from city to city, etc., naming of clubs, etc. Far more rules govern that.
Don't you think the roots of the problem that we're having are in the constant selling of the clubs, the statuses here, or if also that area is not managed properly?
I think we have to ask ourselves why that is happening, and why it's being allowed to happen. And if it wasn't allowed to happen, what will the alternative be, right? Now, the rule of thumb is that nobody would sell an asset that's making them money and that's of value. So that's the first thing we got to do. We got to ask ourselves, what is the true value of these clubs, looking at the way that they are being run, where they are spending way beyond their means and the costs have just gone through the roof, uncontrollably so, where you're only going to get 32 million bucks from the league, yet you are spending 60 million rand a year to run your club. So you need to find 30 million from elsewhere. You're collapsing your other businesses to keep this thing alive. You understand what I mean? So now, if you weren't allowing people then to come in and buy clubs, what, then you'd see a lot of clubs just collapse and go under administration, etc. So you're almost trying to save face, And I mean, you're a journalist. I'm sure the likes of Bloom Celtics. They were going through major problems. The guy had to sell.
They had 40 million rand tax bill.
Something like that. So he had to come to an arrangement so that you have 16 clubs the following year, etc.
What is driving the clubs to spend way beyond their means? Is it? Somebody once told me that maybe it's also the league has got an artificial market, especially in terms of the selling and the buying of players.
The irony about this is that it's not as if we didn't know that this was going to happen one day. We had a summit between 2007, 2008, where the chairman of the EPL at that time said, guys, 16 years ago, we in England should have made a call to say we're going to put salary caps on the players. Right? And we didn't do it. I advise you guys to do that. Sort of, there were rumbles there. We'll do it. And it didn't happen. Years down the line, you
say the summit was in which year?
I think it was around between 20, around the time of 2010.
Okay.
Then later on, in a board of governors meeting, and I was part of the subcommittee. We're told, no, guys, form a subcommittee, come propose to us how we can implement the salary cap story, right? And it was chaired by Ari of Cape Town Spurs.
Cape Town Spurs, yeah.
And
I accept the time.
Exactly. And that document was submitted. It was never followed up on.
It was a good, solid document?
Well, it was a solid document. It was a starting base. You know, for you to say, okay, clubs, you know, you cannot spend more than 70% of your income on wages and salaries. That's easy enough to implement. You've got auditors as a league, that can be one of their functions as auditors to say, okay, beginning of the year, when it's time to submit documentation for club licensing, each club must get their auditors to say that this club, this is it's guaranteed income for the year that's been verified and properly vetted, and then they can only spend X on players. Right? We all have to submit the contracts, so they're on the system. It's easy enough to see what your wage bill is going to be. Then we're all forced to comply. But so long as, you know, tenderpreneurs come in, a guy loses a tender, now he's got no money, now the players still need to be paid.
I'm glad you're mentioning this point, because each and every time a point is made about Sundowns, they spend 20 million or 30 million on this player, people refer to the FFP because they know it's happening in Europe. I've always maintained that in the league, we had an opportunity to introduce this long time ago, but I just don't know what happened. And now you are confirming it to me that the ideas were there, the plan was there, but it was never followed. So no one should be complaining now.
No one should be complaining. And unfortunately now, you know, the chickens are coming home to roost. And I can tell you now, there's many other clubs that are on the brink of financial collapse. You know, the reality, I mean, all we are saying, if you are club X, you come beginning of the year, my income from the league, I'm getting 32 million. From sponsor X, I'm getting 30 million. This is my anticipated revenue from ticket sales. So this year, my income is going to be 70 million rand. Then it's simple maths. You can't spend more than whatever 56 million on wages and salaries, and you have to operate within that. I'm sure in your household you know how much you earn. You can't now go and spend beyond your means, because something's gonna happen. You understand what I'm saying? And therein lies the problems, which is why these clubs, I mean, any business person, when you come and buy a business, the first thing you ask is, well, let me see the financials. The financials have got to make sense. The business must be profitable. So I think the clubs have fallen into a very dangerous trap where clubs have been just allowed to run beyond their means. And I think if the league, and these rules are there, to be honest, if you look closely at the compliance manual and the rules, etc., etc., if the league now took a position to say, okay, guys, now we coming in, and we're going to be strict on how clubs spend, how much money clubs spend. Hey, if Mr. Motsepe's auditors can tell you, hey, his Sanlam shares, because I think the money comes from Sanlam, it's making 500 million a year. Well, he's got the money. He's got the money. Tough. You know, just like you got Chiefs, they're getting mega sponsorships. You got Pirates, mega sponsorship. Declare those, okay, guaranteed income. But if you are club Y and your only income is the grant, hey, tough, my brother. You can't be wanting to sign players that are 400,000 rand a month, 10 of those, and you living beyond your means.
I can tell you that Mamelodi Sundowns will be 200 million rands plus richer in the next few months, coming from the FIFA Club World Cup, just by appearance, maybe winning one or two matches there. So yeah, no, it's really not sustainable, that kind of a model. So as we continue on Far More for the Fans podcast here with former general manager of AmaZulu, Lunga Sokhela, I want to come to the footballing side of things, on the technical side. You've also made some good business when it comes to the transfer deal. I remember the deal of Tamisangweni going to Orlando Pirates,
No, Tiyani went to Sundowns.
Sundowns, yes, Sundowns straight from you. To Sundowns, and then Majoro went to Chiefs.
Yes.
But the Majoro deal, I'm sure it was not easy because there was some serious bidding for Majoro.
Yeah, there was serious bidding, and in fact, Sundowns and Kaizer Chiefs were very interested. I personally got a call from Sundowns, and when Sundowns wants a player, they're willing to pay anything. I think the reality is a transfer is a tripartite deal. The player has to agree. And Majoro's wish was always to play for Kaizer Chiefs. So even though we didn't get as much money as we would have gotten from Sundowns, but
so now shy.
You can't. At the end, the clubs can agree, but if the player doesn't agree, there's no deal. So
Sundowns submitted the offer.
Well, people in football never submit anything. You get a phone call and you make the decision. Let's say, lo, uzongkhokhela lo, ngeke ngikhokhela. Don't think it's not professional when you get a proper letter, hey, offer. No. You get a call while you're in the shower. Hey, we need to talk.
And then Utami?
And I think it was Peter's time.
Yes.
Yeah, an offer was made. In fact, I remember they called me, him and his agent, Ali. I don't know if you know Ali.
Yes,
Ali
the agent.
They called me here to this hotel, I think the Gateway Hotel.
Yes.
So I got clever with them because the story wasn't make sense, and I separated them. I said, Ali, tell me what's going on. Hey, my brother, hey, Sundowns, but I haven't told the player, etc., etc. So then I went to the other room. I said to the player, does Sundowns want you? And he says, yeah, I hear they do. Who told you? No, my agent. Then I saw, right.
Hey.
But again, you gotta assess, and you've also got a lot of intelligence about the player.
Yes.
When you've been with them, and you can make an assessment to say, is this a good deal or a bad deal? And sometimes you are proven correct because if you want to invest that type of money in a player, you also have to assess his longevity and all of that. So at some points we were right, because when you got the money, you go back 2-3 years later, where's the player?
And the player never really reached his full potential.
So it was a good deal at the time. I'm not saying we haven't made mistakes, but hey, now you've got a guy here, he's bolting, he's obviously been promised money. Hey, you know what?
Which one would you consider a mistake, maybe transfer-wise?
To be honest, I wouldn't say any were mistakes.
Okay.
Football, it also, your luck can be in different places. We get criticized a lot, the like of Uzungu. He went from us to Stellenbosch, and then Stellenbosch sent him to Pirates. Now, the reality is, when we got Uzungu at the time, not to Ubongani.
Yes.
He was younger. This is Durban, a lot of party places. He's all over the show. Makes his lifestyle. He's partying.
And the fact that he couldn't succeed at Pirates and Stellies vindicates him.
You see, what at Stellies it did well. Because where do you go in Stellies? Stellies is bars and these big Afrikaners. You're not gonna have too much fun there. So people see
the carry like up if you was now if you was a town
so players' luck can be somewhere else. That environment might be better for them, and we even see it internationally. You know what I mean? Where where players leave a certain club and they go elsewhere and they never reach that potential. So I think in our case, it might be that certain players did well where they went. But their luck was just never with us, and vice versa. Certain players came to us and they blossomed, whereas where they were, they weren't happy. So I can't off the top of my head say, hey, you see that one, we made a mistake. I can't, honestly.
Yeah. I want to go back to the issue of models we're talking about, but now more on the technical side. And I think what I liked with AmaZulu during your time, I don't think they're still even far from it even now, is to understand your model.
Yes.
And you understand as to when is the right time to sell, that you are not going to keep this player forever, because also, I mean, how you guys got Tade. I think you got Tade, he came for free.
Yes, he came for free.
To you guys. But how you sold him to Sundowns and the money you made to Sundowns, how difficult was reaching that decision? And was that the biggest deal you made during your time there?
Yes, I think in its totality, it was definitely the most profitable deal when you look at the package. When you look at what we got at the end. Look, a lot of it will be based on what your perception would have been on the value of Ubongi Ntuli, right? To us, or to me at least, I think he held huge value within the club. And if you look at the player that he became, if you look at how important he was to us, he could easily have been a 4 or 5 million rand player for us. And looking at what he brought as both as a player and as a member of the squad. So going back to how difficult was it to get Tade and how we got Tade, I will not lie to you. It was actually luck. Why was it luck? We didn't look at him. I'm talking about we didn't bring him for trials. We sort of did a desktop exercise. And
YouTube.
Basically YouTube. We got some DVDs, we got some stats.
Okay.
We phoned people in New Zealand, but New Zealand, the league he was playing in is not necessarily a big league. And we said, okay, guys, you know what? A goal scorer is a goal scorer.
But it was a nice
and this guy is scoring goals. Let's bring him. And but what also added a lot of weight is the person that referred Tade to us as a club. It's somebody that wouldn't come and sell you, a dead duck. I believe he's an honest man, and we'd had a relationship with them. So
Mike?
No, no, not Mike.
Okay.
It was Francesco Ferreira.
Pereira.
Yes. So we've had a good relationship of honesty, etc., etc. So from a club point of view, it was a gamble in that it's not a player that was well known to us. Looking at the time, etc., etc., we took a gamble, and thank God it paid off.
And it got you good money.
Got us very good money.
I want to change to the administrative side of things.
Yes.
And I don't want to start back when you were there. Your reflection when you looked at the latest PSL elections, and you see now, okay, there's even younger guys, Jomo coming in, Johnny, there's Tim as well. How do you reflect going back to the cause that you guys were fighting for back in the days?
Look, I think it's good, but at the same time, I don't think we were necessarily fighting to say no the age, because I mean you say Jomo and I mean those guys are 55, 56. They're not spring chickens. We were in our early 30s at the time. You know what I mean? Late 20s. But I think the call was to say no, man. We need to change with time. soon enough, you look at the world today, because at the end of the day, what is the PSL? The PSL is basically entertainment. Now, what are you competing against these days? You're competing against, everybody now has got a voice. Even within the sporting world, you've got massive properties coming up now. You've got UFC, you've got this one where they slap each other, power slap. You're competing with a lot of things. You know what I mean? Now, are we still stuck in the days where the PSL basically had no competition?
No.
Or are we now going into times where things need to change, and we need a fairer playing level, where there's no shenanigans to make sure that certain things suit certain people? That was the main agenda that we're fighting against. And I think the biggest risk for me that the PSL faces is life after Dr. Ivan Khoza. That's the biggest risk that the PSL faces, and they need to sit long and hard. And understand that when that man goes, it's going to be extremely difficult.
What is going to make it difficult?
Look, I mean, I'm not saying that he was perfect, but you got to understand that the PSL stands on that man's shoulders. The way he manages issues, the way that he's led that organization for a long time. Now you look at Manchester United. I don't know which team you support in the EPL, but once
I'm more of a La Liga person. I've got a team, Arsenal. Yeah.
Arsenal. Oh, okay. You see Manchester United when Alex Ferguson left. Because he had been there for so long, and he was able to just make things happen without buying the most expensive players, without any of that. He was still winning leagues, once in a while Champions League. Now when he left, now all of a sudden everyone's besides themselves. Hey, the things are falling apart. Now that is my biggest fear for the PSL. The fact that he's been such an influential person behind the PSL. Right. When he goes, what's going to happen? And the biggest question is, of those people that is left there, can we honestly say, if we have to be honest to ourselves, that any of them can take over and do what is
shoes to fill, eh?
Massive shoes to fill. So, I mean, if they have to be frank to themselves and they were honest and they were just not egotistical and they just want status and power, they would be honest and say, hey guys, none of us here are going to be can touch sides with this man.
Does it become maybe a conversation now, especially with this in this current term, maybe for the chairman to start working on that succession plan?
Yes, and I think that succession plan is going to require that certain policies are changed.
Like what?
Such as the makeup of the EXCO,
okay,
to allow for non-club owners to come in. I think that's an important thing, because so long as it can only be club owners, then you've got one of 32 people that can be chairman of the league. So open it up. Maybe have an EXCO that comprises of non-executive members. Now you can select anybody in the world. Because the reality is, if you look at the caliber of Dr. Ivan Khoza, he's an international standard football administrator.
Certainly.
So now you're looking at this brand. It's no longer the brand that he found. He's developed it to being a billion rand industry. Now, are any of those people that are there? I mean, I'll be honest, you've got, I think, people that have got certain skills that are strong. The likes of your John Committees, I think, is very strong commercially. Engagement
is out now, and there was a surprise that he didn't make the cut.
Exactly. Now maybe he's not too strong at handling certain politics. Now, for you to find a well-rounded person who's going to be strong commercially, strong politically, dealing with issues with the federation, the Football Association, dealing with the club issues, dealing with government issues, There's this issue now of ICASA where certain policies might affect the value of the broadcast rights. So it's a very complicated job.
Yeah, you were actually very vocal on that relationship between the league and also the PSL, and how the two can work well together. And I'm sure now you'll even know more about it because you've been helping out Safa at PSL. How vital is that relationship?
No, it's extremely vital. You know, sometimes, and that becomes a frustration, you know, for the younger generation. You know, you get thrown into something and you're dealing with agreements and fights that were there way before you were even born. So squabbles that old men are having, you now get thrown into them. You know what I mean? Now, the decision that was made, I don't know when it was made, 1980 something.
Yes, I think towards the unification of the footballing structures.
Exactly. That's, you know, suffers this man belongs to this man and PSL belongs to this man. What is that? You know, in South Africa, we must talk about football and the development of football. And all structures need to work for one common purpose. And that is the development of football. And that is exactly what happens in rugby. If we have to compare with you know, a sport that's also professional and well organized. So up until that happens, I don't think we will see our full potential in terms of structural what's the word? Excellence of football.
I'm not sure if this is what you mean, but I saw recently FNB signing a deal just last week with SA Rugby.
Yes.
They are going to be here on the Springbok jersey, and you have another retail company here, and that sponsorship goes to not just Springbok, but it covers different levels of rugby.
Yeah, yes, it's that, but it's also, I mean, it's difficult for the two bodies to even agree on certain dates when players must be released to go play for junior national teams, etc., etc. People just fail to sit in one room and agree what's best for football. You understand what I'm saying? And so long as you've got two organizations where the heads cannot get along and work for one common purpose, they can never be a winner. You know what I mean? The person that's going to suffer is the person on the ground. That's the reality of things. And that definitely has to change, I think, going forward for the benefit of football in South Africa.
If the last time we qualified properly for the World Cup, not 2010,
Okay.
we had a squad dominated. I think there were only, maybe in the starting lineup, there were only just 2 or 3 South African-based players. But when I look at the makeup of this current team and what this team is doing, bronze medalists at the AFCON, knocking out a team full of La Liga players, EPL players, Bundesliga players in Morocco, and you can mention all the other teams. And now they are leading a group that has got Nigeria as well. That tells you that, as you say, that the chairman has already brought this strong league here locally, but also the structures on the ground at amateur level that are pushing up players are also good as well. So it tells you that, I think, to what you are saying, that the potential of this country, including a strong national league, if they can work together and produce a team going to the World Cup, it's something.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think certain things also need to be looked at in terms of the positioning of the South African PSL. You know, what are we? Are we a feeder league? And that's not a bad thing, because then you sort of bringing a very aspirational mind to the players that come here. that I want to be good enough to go into France or La Liga or the Dutch league or whatever the case may be. Now those conversations are not happening, and those are very important conversations, you know, for the development of the sport. So I mean, you are correct. With CAF being better organized, we've got high level CAF competitions. The standard of our players, especially with the likes of Sundowns, Pirates, frequently, featuring there. It's boded well for the PSL. And, you know, players such as, who's our striker? Foster.
Yes, Lyle Foster. Yeah.
Lyle Foster playing he's playing in the championship now, and, you know, you've got Percy Tau, who played a little bit in England, played for Club Brugge in Belgium. Now you've got players on a week-to-week basis, they're playing extremely high-level competition. So it makes it easier when they come and play in the national team. But far more can be done if there was better cooperation.
Yeah, I guess how difficult was it in the BOG? Because I think you developed a thick skin there. But how difficult was it? And did you get enough support from some of the guys who are almost at your age?
Look, I think the BOG for me, it wasn't difficult because, you know, I came there to give an honest account of how I felt on certain issues. Now, unfortunately, certain people take that personally. But, I mean, when I put my opinion there, it's with respect, and I'm talking about how I see things. Now, the difference with me is that, you know, in the back of my mind, this is an investment that directly affects me, you know. Now, when you went to the BOG, which was quite sad at the end of the day, is that a lot of club owners were not going to the BOG. They're sending their office staff, they're sending, you know, whoever sits there, the receptionist, they go to the BOG to make decisions that affect clubs. So, yeah, it was there was a big, you know, it started becoming almost a rubber stamping body. And if you came there and you haven't been caucused the day before, would say this is a position, and you talk outside of that, you start getting victimized, you know. So it's unfortunate that culture did creep in. I wouldn't say it was difficult, but hey, you know, I think some of the things that I advised them about are becoming a problem now. And that's what I was saying. I mean, the issue of salary caps, I say it, Mike McCabe loses his mind, other agents lose their mind, but the reality is football right now, it's living in a space that doesn't exist. You cannot afford to be paying players what you're paying them. And I mean, for goodness sake, some of these players, you're paying them 500,000 rand a month, and he scores you 5 goals. Where's the logic in that? So you're paying 600, I mean 500,000 times 12 is what, 6 million. So you're paying R1 million a goal. So where's the logic?
Yeah. So the grant,
yes,
around what, 2 million rands a month?
It's about 2 million rand, and then there's extra, you get about 32 million from the league, including participation in cups.
Okay. And roughly then, how much does it cost you properly to every month?
I think to run a club professionally per month, look, costs have gone up, etc., but you're looking at anything from 5 to 7 million.
5 to 7 million?
Yes.
What happened to the deal that you're supposed to have with Suncoast?
No, we had that deal with Suncoast for supporters and that.
Okay.
That's when we had, we ran it together with Suncoast, but I think as the years then we moved to the Marriott Group, etc. So we've had many partners come and go, but it was a very good partnership.
Okay, I can see they're trying to. What I know is that in football, There's 90 minutes, there's extra time, and there's penalties.
There's penalties.
On to extra time.
Okay.
on to extra time. I think a year or two ago, I was having an interview with you, and I thought maybe starting something new on the northern side of Durban, or on the north coast side. I hear you've got some interest in horse racing as well.
Yes, I'm working now with, in fact, on some of the properties we've got down there, they are equestrian facilities.
Okay.
I'm currently working assisting. You know, because as I said, I'm passionate about sports and I love giving back. Working with traditional horse racing now, just to professionalize the sport. I think it's a sport now mainly played in the rural areas, and it's got massive potential to create not only besides the sport, but creating jobs, creating an economy around eventing, commercialization. I mean, you look at the Dundee July, it's attended by 40,000 people. It's growing big time. So yes. Commentating. It's growing in leaps and bounds. So I'm enjoying that. Also taking what I learned from football and giving back to sports, especially that we benefit from as black people.
And your role there at Safa and PSL, I know it's a more advisory role, subcommittee, but what can you say about it?
Well, look, again, you know, it's me going back, so I work with them on two subcommittees, the finance and administration, so just to try and assist them in putting systems in place for proper financial management there, as well as compliance, so that we're sustainable and we show that we've got good corporate governance. And then two, they've got a vision for an eThekwini Academy. So I'm facilitating some talks. They're trying to find creative ways to get that set up for them.
In fact, Safa and PSL, one of those few regions that are doing well commercially or even financially. And I can tell you that they even have a 1 million rand sponsorship. I'm sure the mother body would love to have that with them right now on this day we're talking about. That sponsorship, especially that particular amount. I think it would come in handy for them.
Yeah,
but I'm more interested now. I want to switch you on the side, but before, we've got a tactical game that we have to play.
Okay.
Yes, but before we get there,
yes.
So we can, I mean, this intellectual property that you've got and you've been sharing here, it cannot be gone forever. So back.
I mean, right now off the top of my mind, and I keep telling people that what drove me a lot in AmaZulu Football Club, it wasn't just an interest in football per se, but it was also the interest in the brand of AmaZulu. Do I have anything on the horizon or a timeline where I say, no, you know, I'll come back in such and such a year? I would say no. I think looking at where I am now, my focus is there's a lot of other business interests that I'm pushing on with that need time to also just grow and mature, and my mind is there right now. But at the same time, also giving back to sports in general, not just football, as you said, horse racing, giving my knowledge, because I think football, that knowledge is there. You know, there's a lot of individuals, and that knowledge exists within the industry. But there's a lot of industries that don't have that knowledge, that could use that knowledge, that I want to try and assist, you know, so that it can uplift the black child. And
you're at the right place there at Safa and PSL. Trust me, that region is one of the most important regions.
Yes.
Growing up, it was South Gauteng, it was Western Cape, it was North Gauteng, it was South KZN, which is, I think it's at PSL. So that is the very important one. Just before we get to penalties, which is the technical board, there's a very important question that I didn't ask you.
Yes.
When you and the old man decided, it's time to let go of Usutu. What triggered that moment?
If you recall, it was during COVID times, and the offer came, and it was a strong offer. It was a legitimate offer, not like your George Komantaraki's offer that came with some Greeks, what. And you know, you look at a number of things. You look at where the old man was age-wise. You look at where the country is and the unknown of this COVID that just came and collapsed everything. The effects on the other business as well. And also just, you know, there's a saying that says, you know, a good dancer knows when to leave the dance floor. I think we'd run a good race, and you know what? At some point you're like, you know what, maybe it's good time for me to leave now. You know, we've done so much over the past 15 years. As I'm saying, my old man was getting older. He's had his health issues. Also looking at where I was, you know, now I've got a young child, and maybe I need to focus elsewhere and maybe come back in 10, 15 years time. It was just a good time, and the offer was good. So all of those things looked at, it was good to hand over, and I think Sandile has done a wonderful job and is continuing to do a wonderful job, you know, so that's been extremely, you know, positive.
Now we enter the penalty kicks, penalty shootout phase, which is more about testing your knowledge, but also like you are talking about Sandile Zungu being in charge of that club, and when I look at some of the staff members of AmaZulu who are still there, it also talks to the vision that you as the Sokhelas had at the time. When I look at brilliant Katini, I mean, you know, when you talk about he was the up and rising media officer at the time, but I see him as one of the best in the league today, always there for journalists, you know. And also, this is a young boy that you brought in during your time, and I think it's not only brilliant. There are a couple of guys that you left at AmaZulu, they are still there now,
yes,
and serving well. But amongst those guys who are serving well, I mean, in terms of the vision, but one of the names that he was there as a young player growing up at the time was Sage Stevens. And I'm sure you're proud to see him as a Bafana goalkeeper now. But it's just one of the players we're going to talk about. We're going to look at, I'm going to give you 3 names in terms of goalkeepers. I'm going to give you 3 names also for a defender and also the striker. And then you'll give me in terms of, I don't think I've got a coach, but maybe you can mention who should be coaching this team.
Yeah.
So looking at the goalkeepers, I've got 3 goalkeepers, so you must give me one.
Yes.
Bongeni Mzimela, Sewanga Mbata, and Sage Stevens.
And we're gonna talk about them at their best, right?
At their best. But you must choose one.
Yes.
Yes.
I would say Siambata. When he was at his best.
Why Siambata?
He was better than I think the other 2. Also at their best. If you recall, there was even controversy about him not being selected in the Bafana setup by Stuart Baxter, because he was wonderful. So I would say leadership at his best, what he did and the value that he added to the club, that would be my choice.
Interesting. And then defenders, there's 3. I see my other province where I was born is also represented here. Tamsang Nateise, Pere Aruerai, and Spum Konza.
I would say out of those, and you know, disappointingly he left when I think he could have done so much better for us. I would say Teise. And he unfortunately, as he was peaking and he was becoming a Puyol type defender, controlling the back, he then decided to go to Super Sport. But of those 3, I would say him at his best.
Yeah, no, I remember him very well. And then midfielders, Kagiso Namela, John Shoes Mushweu, Thamsanqa Sangweni.
I would say Senamela. There's one goal that people didn't see of Senamela. He ran the whole width of Princess Makoko and scored a goal. I wish I could get that video. But in terms of, again, at the time, and he came here very young, I think he was 19, 20. I would pick him at his best.
I think I remember there was a game that was played recently.
Yes.
Where Coach Mangoba was being asked about players and comparing players. And I think he picked Kagiso Namela over Andile Jale.
Yes.
So I think that tells you.
You know, he's top player.
Yeah.
He had other problems, but top talent.
Yeah. And then the strikers, Lithono Majoro, Emiliano Tade, and Bongindole.
Oof.
The late.
This is a very difficult one because they are so different and they were so important. Their qualities were so important. I'll tell you why. I mean, Bongi was strong. You know, he was not a prolific goal scorer, but he led to other players scoring goals. You look at Majoro, you give him the ball in the box, he'll score. And he's a late bloomer. Sorry, the other one, Tade.
Tade, yes.
Tade was not really an out-and-out striker, but he was a goal scorer, natural goal scorer. But if you had to say, okay, Lunga, at his best, who would you have taken? Majoro. Majoro.
Complete.
He was a goal scorer. He's going to give you goals. Ultimately, you want your striker to give you goals. I would say Majoro.
Majoro, yeah. But I also liked Bongindole.
I liked all three. But as I say, you know, if you're giving me a choice of one at his best, Majoro was fire.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm told that Dr. Keza Mutaung, big fan of Bongindole.
No, Bongi was a warrior. He was strong, and it was unfortunate that when he left Golden Arrows, he did not go to a club where he was allowed to really showcase his talents.
Yes.
I mean, as I say, I love Bongi. You know, I was extremely happy when we signed him here permanently. But you only giving me a choice of one.
Well, that's the game. It's not me. I don't make the game. Farmer for the Fans podcast makes the game. Lungas, thanks so much for it.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Thank you.
This is Lunga Sokhela, former general manager at Post-AmaZulu, as he was helping us here today in this Farmer for the Fans edition podcast. Very insightful one, I must say, when it comes to the administration side of the game. We don't hear a lot about this space, and I think it's a very important space that you've brought us into today, and then I'm sure we'll hear more from him. He says he doesn't want to come back into the game on the professional side, but he's still playing a very important role on the other side, even at amateur level, helping there in the administration side as well. But I think for now, that's where we have to leave this one. We'll be back with more editions to come. For now, keep on enjoying watching Farmer for the Fans podcast.